Hey everyone, we have a special guest today again, David D, who is new to the show, a first timer, and my chair is squeaky. This is
long time listener, first time caller.
His inaugural, which is a weird word to say, and I'm probably not saying it properly. Edition. So anyway, welcome everyone, David D.
Hello. Oh wait, no.
Hey, thanks.
Hi, I'm David D.
Hey,
All right.
welcome. I feel welcome. How do you feel?
I'm glad. Welcome. I'm welcome. You're welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh my God.
You're listening to episode 46 of Time to Lean, and here's a song with special guest, David D. What does D stand for? I don't know. Davidson. Dave Davidson.
Oh, so anyway, John, do you know Dave? I think maybe you've met. I remember Dave had the.
I want to say I met him once, but mostly by reputation.
I think we met a long time ago.
Yes, it was.
Back in the Rapid City days.
Which is often what we talk about on this show. So what a segue.
I've noticed a theme on a lot of your shows that you do talk
You
about
think?
Rapid City, South Dakota.
Well, and David.
Somebody's
David,
gonna
Was
stick
that
up for
a
him.
groan that I heard?
Heavy sigh.
Rapid City.
John's getting to that age where I think he threw out his back a little bit.
Oh,
No,
just a
this yes, we all went to. Dave went to Central, Rapid City Central. He's a former cobbler. I guess once you're a cobbler, you're always a cobbler.
Yeah, I like to make my own shoes.
I know.
Still.
It comes in handy.
I never really got a grasp on how odd that mascot was until I left Rapid City and saw how utterly bland most high school mascots are compared to that one.
Well, in South Dakota, I think every other high school named like the Tigers. I mean, when that your typical.
Yeah, lots of
The
tigers.
Tigers.
Large animal names.
Yes.
Well, they don't have to change them now.
That's true,
That's true.
right?
If you-
I mean,
yeah.
that's very safe.
Now we don't know. The cobbler was named after a person. I don't know.
It was named after Uke Cobb, one of the first football coaches at Central.
And
And-
he was a Grand Dragon in the KKK.
Oh no! We have to change the name.
No.
The mascot.
I don't. Sorry,
I don't know
really-
if he was.
I
don't want.
I don't know that much about him, but I can't confirm nor deny that he has any letters that he's
His past
joined.
is shrouded in mystery.
Yes.
When David, do you go by Dave or David?
Yes.
I guess
I go by
right. Okay.
Dave. Dave
Well,
works
we
best.
used to. Dave and I used to do road trips quite a bit from Rapid City to Brookings. We both went to SDSU after Central, and we, there were a few times where we'd ride together, and we had kind of a radio show, I guess, sort of going on. Lightning Dave and Thunder Phil, and
That's right.
so
Thunder Phil.
Thunder Phil.
It's like Thunder Phil powers activate.
form of a guy in a chair. That's not very.
Oh,
form of a
sorry.
cobbler.
Form of a cop. Form of a shoemaker.
A broken shoe.
Come on down to Red Wing
Sorry, I
Shoes in
totally
downtown
hijacked
Rapid
that.
City, South Dakota. We'll make you up a set of brand new shoes there, right?
At Rudolph's.
Rudolph's,
shoes.
that's right.
Remember Rudolph's?
I remember Rudolph's.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer. So Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? A little, who is you? Oh, this is a new segment I'm calling, Who Is You?
Who is me? So, yeah, so I'm Dave, and I'm from Rapid City, South Dakota. Like long walks on the beach, and especially the ones in Rapid City, South Dakota. So
By the creek.
The beaches of Rapid
the
Creek.
beaches of Rapid City. Yeah,
Well, it could be a good novel.
it's a short walk.
Off a long pier.
Well,
Pier.
pier would be a little bit of a longer walk if you walked there from Rapid City.
But there was not much else to do in those days, so you had to walk to pier.
You had to walk to pier, or as everybody else in the United States would call it, Pierre.
Blasphemous.
Blasphemous. That's right. We only in South Dakota do you know truly how to pronounce French words like pier and Belfouche and Flandreau and all these other wonderful pronunciations of
Oh, I forgot about Flandreau.
Flandreau.
How
Ned
would you pronounce
Flandrews.
Belfouche properly?
Belfouche.
Belfouche?
Would it be
I
Belfouche?
don't
Belfouche. I don't know.
But we didn't call it bare butt.
No. Except every time we drove by it. Is it called something else now?
Yes. I don't know what it is.
I think it's got
It's a more official name.
yeah,
It has an American Indian name.
Indian,
right?
yeah, a native name now.
Matopaha or Bear Mountain.
And I think Harney Peak has changed its name too. It's
Yes,
no
and I
longer
forgot what that was
Harney
too.
Peak. Is
I've
it like
forgotten.
Black Elk Mountain or something?
Black Elk Peak?
Black Elk
No.
sounds right, actually.
Yeah.
No, that's right.
The narrator will tell us.
Then later, after this is edited.
Phil was right. It's Black Elk Peak. This segment of White Guys Trying to Figure Out the Original Native Names of South Dakota Landmarks is brought to you by Big Dan's Hand Soup. It's the soup you eat with your hands. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Yep. What? We don't edit.
We,
It's all live.
this is all
It's
as
perfect.
far as you know.
No,
One
we
take.
do edit. Although sometimes we say we'll edit that out and we don't, but
Yeah,
that's all right.
and that's what makes it fun.
Well, God bless you.
Yeah, so
So-
I guess getting back to who is me, we kind of got off track there, and that's fine. I'm not even sure if this is recording, but that's good anyway.
Is this thing on?
Yeah, it is. Looks like it is. Oh, you said hang on, so I'm hanging on.
No, I said, is this thing on?
Oh, is this thing on? It sounded like you said hang on. I'm hanging on.
Pick up your cues faster.
Oh my God.
I'm not playing pool.
John, this episode may this whole episode may just be Who Is Dave?
It's going to take that long.
It's this is
Like walk into pier.
yes, exactly.
I'm enjoying it.
We should actually we should just do a walk across South Dakota.
Oh yeah, and
We could
record
make
it.
sort of a Williams and Ree redo thing. So,
Right.
Ooh,
Except 3 white guys.
yeah.
just 3 white guys.
Maybe we could
like a
pick
bad
up some
Bob
more
Hope
people on the
movie
way. We'll pick up a merry band of
I'm
characters
on the
the way.
road to Pier. That's one of the Bing Crosby and Bob Hope traveling shows.
Yes,
way
the
back.
road movies.
The road to Pier.
Old stuff.
Oh, yeah, we're going way back. It's in the way back machine. But so back to who I think we wanted to get back to who is I.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did.
Or maybe we don't. I don't know. But
Well, where in our great United States do you live?
so nowadays, I live in Colorado, Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that's home. I've probably been in the state of Colorado now almost as long as I lived in South Dakota, but it's still
But not all at once.
but not all at once. No, I bounced around quite a bit. After
Because you were in the Air Force.
I was in the Air Force, so
Yeah.
they
bounce you around.
Lived in Rapid City, went to Central with Phil and the gang, and then South Dakota State. And after South Dakota State, I went into the Air Force. They paid for school, so I had to pay back my school by
Well,
serving.
yeah, you were in ROTC even.
Yeah, by serving in the military ended up being just over 21 years.
Oof.
And that took me all over the place. California, lots of times in Colorado, Wyoming. I was up in Greenland for a year.
Oh, that's cool.
Right.
Yeah, and
That's cool.
D.C. area for a big chunk of time. Too.
Oh yeah.
So.
I still keep thinking you're there still. I can't. Somehow my mind is not adjusted that you're back in Colorado. But
Yeah,
I'll get it.
It could be that I'm just stuck in traffic in the Beltway right now, and I'm still making my way to Colorado.
It's like a bad Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
episode.
I don't know if you've spent much time in DC, but and it's a
heard.
great place to visit. Lots to do there, and lots of stuff that's free to do, which is neat. But working in the city, and I worked downtown in the city for most of the 6 years that I was there.
Wow.
And coming from Maryland, where we lived, I'd spend an hour and a half, one way, traveling to work.
Oh
And
God.
that was one way. So, and it didn't matter how you did it. You could drive your car or you could take the metro. But it was going to take you about an hour and a half, to get to work, one way. I think the longest commute I had in DC was 4 hours. And that was
Oh my
Wow,
God.
that's nuts.
that was on the way to work. We had a heavy rain, and it kind of flooded out some of the roadways down around Anacostia, where I was driving to, and closed the bridges. So you got to cross the Potomac and the Anacostia to get to Bowling Air Force Base, where I was going, and so you're crossing a couple bridges. And if the bridges are closed and you're stuck, you're just stuck. So I could see my office. I could see my office about 2 hours into my commute. But then I spent another 2 hours just standing still, waiting for the cars to start moving again. And I finally, after about 4 hours, got in and was able to get in the office. Went to my desk, called my boss, and I said, "Hey, boss, just got in. Going home now." Because if it's going to take me 4 hours to get home, that's a full day. So I've put in my hours, man.
Oh.
Yeah.
They should have called in the Marines and had you lifted over there.
Airlifted, have Marine One come get me.
Yeah, that wouldn't have cost any money.
Nah. Yeah,
David D is stranded. Please rescue
that's
him.
right.
So, Dave, are you considered retired military then?
Yes, I
Okay.
retired 7 years ago. Actually, 7 years ago, last week. And
Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So now I get paid every day just for waking up. So
And waiting in traffic.
and well, I don't have to do that anymore. Yeah,
No, I know.
yeah. But now, yeah. So now I'm a contractor, and I do a lot of the same kind of work I did before, space operations. So I can.
But you're not in the Space Force yet, right?
Well, our organization will be moving to the Space Force.
Oh,
sometime.
excellent.
Yeah, sometime soon. Now I know you guys are laughing. Yeah, Space Force, blah blah blah, and
No.
yeah,
I love it.
Everybody,
No, I know part of it is very real.
Yeah, so there's the part about the politics side of it, and I get that, but nobody calls it Truman's Air Force, even though he signed the Defense Authorization Act creating the Air Force. So therefore,
Yeah, back when it was just part of the Army. Yeah.
right. So nobody's going to call it Trump's Space Force, because I'll tell you that we were working on this when I was in active duty, 15 years ago, trying to get.
Oh, no, the Air Force has been doing space stuff for a long time.
The Air Force has been doing space for about 70 years almost. Basically since it was created.
They seem to operate it kind of in parallel with the NASA stuff.
Yeah.
As far as that
They have a
goes.
different,
because they were doing
flavor.
other kinds of missions, but they were kind of this other arm of our space stuff.
Yeah, the
stuff.
NASA was created to be the quote unquote civilian arm, and then the Air Force pretty much was the executive agent for the military arm, and has been for most of its existence. But back in early 2000s, so Donald Rumsfeld, before he became SecDef under George Bush, actually ran a study on the military space, and they recommended way back then that we
Sure.
establish a separate Space Force. And when I was at that time, I was going into what we called the U.S. Air Force Space Operations School out of the Space Warfare Center, and part of our task was to do what the old Army Air Corps did back in the 30s, which was start up this Air Corps Tactical School, which led to a separate air service or Air Force. And we were kind of doing the same thing at the Space Warfare Center that later became the National Security Space Institute. So I was the first, what we call a plank holder of that organization, and the first dean of academics there. So we were kind of pushing forward, years ago, to be a separate service. And Russia and China have already had their own separate space forces. So we're just kind of consolidating. It's really, to be honest, it's really more about money, because if you move it out from the Air Force, all those guys that fly the jets can't just steal your money for more jets. So, and that's really what it was. We were like third-class citizens in the Air Force as space guys, because we didn't fly anything. All the stuff I always say when we talk to the pilots, say, "What do you fly?" Well, so you fly a F-15.
The USS Enterprise.
You fly an F-15? Well, what I fly is higher and faster than anything you'll ever fly. So how about 17,500 miles an hour at 100 miles? So.
But the real Space Force is not run by Steve Carell, however.
No, but General Raymond, who is in charge of the chief of space operations I've met, he said, in an interview a couple weeks ago, he said, "Hey, funny show, but Steve's he's not cast right. His hair's too long." That's
probably true. Actually.
Well, Raymond's bald, so he says it should be like Bruce Willis or somebody that should be playing me.
Oh, that was Independence Day or something.
Yeah.
No, Armageddon.
Oh, right.
That's what you're thinking of.
That's right.
I get my.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that was a show that, Dave, I don't know if you watched it, but I felt it was just kind of so-so. As a show, even, never mind about it having any basis in reality, but it just seemed a little muddled on what it was trying to do, and was often unfunny, which is sad considering the talent of the people working on it.
We talking about the Space Force show?
Yeah,
okay,
the Netflix show.
I have
Armageddon animated
I have not
series.
Seen it, but I've heard kind of the same things you're saying, that it's unfortunately a little disappointing. I think we were all the space geeks like me. We're all kind of hoping that it would be,
Oh yeah,
kind of
the
Space Force's
people
version
involved
of MASH, right? But
yeah, that it might have kind of a satirical edge to it, which it didn't really, unfortunately. And I don't know. I mean, I'm a pretty big fan of the Office, and I like Steve Carell, and it had a great cast. John Malkovich is in it, of all things, and yet it just often was not very good.
Maybe they rushed it out.
Yeah, who knows?
What can you talk about some of? I know some of the things are classified, but what are some of the things that you did? I know you were keeping track of where everything was in space.
Yeah.
Not you personally, but
exactly. And I tell you what, it takes a long time to count it by hand, but we get it done. Yeah, no.
Hey, Dave, let me stop you right there.
Okay.
Before we get any further, we're gonna sound off on what we're all drinking tonight. We always have to do that.
All right.
Our fans get very upset if we stray too far from the pattern. So, Phil, what do you have?
Do your fans really get upset? I mean,
we
you get
comments.
nasty letters, or what happens?
That guy from the Philippines.
That guy,
totally,
yeah, he's a bastard.
He totally takes off on us. I'd like to talk to that guy anyway, or a lady, or whatever.
Yeah, no, it could be. We don't know who it is.
It's a burner account from Phil. Really, it's Phil's burner account.
I have it routed.
Phil spoofed his IP
Philippines.
address, so he would.
I paid to have a router in the Philippines just to get one more download.
Is that what you did just before we started? Just get another download in, or is that we have to stop again for that?
Different kind of download.
Oh, sorry.
No, it was a number
one. You did a
one.
download to the sewer net. Yeah.
Space poop.
Sorry, this is terrible. Okay,
poop,
Phil,
poop,
what do you got?
Oh, I had a grain belt in honor of Lee H., one of our guests that had been on before, and of course went to SDSU as well. But now I'm having a Scotch and soda. Now, unfortunately for Dave, we got him started a little early, so I don't know. But
yeah, literally was still sitting at my place of work here, which is also my house right now.
Sure.
With the coronavirus going on and all that good stuff. So
No 4-hour commute.
yeah, so I'm actually having something that I it was almost like walking to pier to get, but I had to get this in North Dakota last summer. It's a Mr. Pibb Xtra. From my stash.
I'm glad.
It's from
Oh,
my.
are you Pibb deprived out there?
Yeah, no. Say, it used to be when I lived in Wyoming. I used to go to Colorado to get Mr. Pibb. And make a border run, right, and then put it all in the back trunk to be real quiet about it. And, make sure you're driving the speed limit when you cross back into Wyo, because you don't want anybody to know.
That's
You got
contraband.
You got Mr. You got any Mr. Pibb in there? No, sir. Just 50 kilos of Coke. Oh, you're good.
On your way.
I got a little Mountain Dew.
Well, I've never met a bona fide Mr. Pibb fan.
I don't know if I'm
That's
bona
extraordinary.
fide, but I mean, is it extraordinary?
Well-
see, part of the allure of Mr. Pibb for me is that it's hard to get
Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, I'm very familiar with that. Yeah.
because when we lived in Rapid City, you couldn't get it there. But
No.
if you drove across the state to Sioux Falls, hey,
And I know exactly why that is, sadly.
yeah,
Is because in Rapid City, in the old days at least, the local Coca-Cola bottler also distributed Dr. Pepper.
yeah,
And Mr. Pibb, of course, is a Coke offshoot.
yes,
So
it is. Yeah, it's a
there it is.
Coca-Cola.
Well, and I also have a nostalgic connection to it because one day, we would drink it when we go to Sioux Falls.
Right.
That was the exciting. To do something exciting, we'd drive to Sioux Falls and go to the
Big city.
Sioux Empire Mall, which may be changing their name too. I don't know.
Maybe
But,
Sioux Falls will change its name.
It'll be called Falls.
Falls.
Maybe they should.
Yeah.
But so one day we went to Wendy's and you'd order at the front counter, and the gal with the kind of a visor cap had one of these kind of microphones, and you'd click the button on the side. Maybe it was something like out of almost like the 60s or something. But anyway, and so you'd say everything you said, she'd say into that microphone back behind you, and of course we all ordered the Biggie Mr. Pibb. So Biggie Mr. Pibb, and I don't know. We just had so much fun with that. I don't know. I think Dave and Mike were probably dragging me to a sporting event or something, but I remember the Biggie Mr. Pibbs.
Well, yeah, I do too, and I'm sad that I can't get a Biggie Mr. Pibb anywhere nearby. I have to make a border crossing up to North Dakota to load my truck up full of Pibb, and
That's
that's
a couple borders.
That's a couple borders, yeah, from where I am now.
Oh,
so.
just send a drone over.
You can't just get it on Amazon or something.
You could. You could.
But
I just
what's the
happen
fun
to,
in that?
when I happen to be locations where I can get it, I'll stock up. I'll go to a Hy-Vee in Brookings or something like that.
Dave likes to do things the hard way.
Yeah. Well,
at some point-
it's more authentic if you actually pick it up yourself rather than having it drop shipped from Amazon.
That's true. It's like there's a pretty well-known beer here in the Twin Cities area called Spotted Cow. Phil's familiar with it, I think.
Yeah.
And it's made in Wisconsin, and they refuse to sell it in Minnesota. So of course you can go and we're close to the Wisconsin border here, so you can drive whatever it is 20, 40 minutes over there to the across the river and get it in a store there. But you can't buy it in the Twin Cities proper.
Strange.
But for some reason it has more of an allure, I think, because you have to go to Wisconsin to get it.
Yeah.
I mean, people like it. It's good beer, but it's not that amazing.
Well, yeah, and
But it's because it's scarcity, and I think that's why they do it. They could very easily sell it here, but
Sure.
they choose to make it a little bit harder to get.
You have to drive to Wisconsin to get it.
Exactly.
Yeah, we do similar things. So, I've spent a lot of time up north. With my wife's family, they live up in Maine, so we get up to Canada a lot. And then I've had, when I was in the Air Force, I did some NORAD assignments, so I had Canadians that I worked with. So I got introduced to a couple of Canadian things. One of those being, Tim Hortons. Which at one time you had a Tim Hortons there in the Mall of America.
We had a whole bunch of them here in the Twin Cities, and they all folded.
Yeah, they're all closed up.
Horton heard of what?
And in fact, when we were in North Dakota last summer, we were in Minot, and same thing. They had a Tim Hortons up there, so we went to Tim Hortons. But that's closed now as well. In Maine, same deal. A bunch of them closed. So Maine, I can understand because you're so close to Boston, and you've got Dunkin' Donuts there.
Yeah, that's kind of the epicenter.
Yeah.
Just like if you tried to open a bunch of them somewhere in the South where Krispy Kreme is centered.
Yeah.
So kind of thing. I it's so funny that when you mentioned NORAD, I always unfortunately think of the movie War Games.
Yeah.
Which, so Dave, did you have to walk through that giant vault every day to go into work?
So
and did you say I'll
game.
piss on a spark plug if it did any good? Sorry, formative movie, but
yeah, well,
very funny.
So that movie gets a lot of traction in my line of work,
I'm sure.
for a lot of reasons. But obviously the first scenes in there where they're having their little drill and the two missileers.
Turn your key, sir.
Yeah, turn your key, sir. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna
it's
shoot
so
the
funny.
guy,
Yeah.
then you can't turn his key, right? If you shoot the guy, that's not why we carried the pistols. So I was first assignment. I was one of those guys that would be waiting around to turn the key if we needed to.
Yeah, silo person. Yeah.
Missileer. Yeah. So, but we always laughed at that because you carried the weapons for another reason. You usually had classified stuff in your bags that you were transporting. But so what? Yeah. So I shoot the guy. What's that going to do? So I've shot the guy. Now I definitely cannot turn the key because you need the cooperative. You need both guys to turn. Cooperative key turn.
Yeah. So Dave, you're drinking a Pibb though?
I am drinking a Pibb. I know that was a long discussion about.
That really was sidetracked. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So
hey, I love sidetracks.
So yeah, and
that's cool. I'm drinking a gin and tonic. Pretty boring, but it's a hot day.
It is a hot day.
You guys,
I was outside cleaning my gutters, which was pretty miserable. So
yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to run out before and grab anything of a little more potency than my Mr. Pibb here. But
I guess I'd be disappointed personally
if I
you
wasn't
weren't
drinking a Mr. Pibb. Yeah.
Okay.
But I do miss though that grain belt that you're drinking. Those are you can't get those here. I do have a friend down the street who's from Minnesota. He's from northern Minnesota, and he goes back every year, and he brings back a whole bunch of just like I do with the Pibb. He brings back the grain belt.
Sounds like a job for Milo Minderbender.
We have a
there's
belt
something
party.
about it, especially on a really hot day, especially maybe doing some yard work or whatever. But it's a lager, it's a lighter one, but it's got more flavor than like Bud Light or something like that. But
Yeah, trying to remember what it was that we drank in college. Was it the Keystone Light?
I don't remember.
It was something that was really just water with a little bit of coloring in it.
I do remember it was something in a green can.
I think we drank Keystone or something like that, and it was just now. I would never drink anything like that. It's flavorless.
I don't even remember.
Yeah,
I've blocked out certain things, but
did you block them out, or are they just kind of blocked out for you? Should I be giving the interview, or how does this work?
It doesn't.
It doesn't work.
More often than not. Anyway, back to our program.
Back to the program.
I don't remember where we were.
We were talking about, kind of
where I'd been.
David
D.
Yeah, my job. So I did kind of bounced around in the Air Force for 21 plus years. I was in Colorado and DC. We talked about that up in Greenland. The Greenland job was interesting. So that was, you were talking about tracking the space objects. So I worked at a big radar up there, and primarily that's what we did. Every day was, you're building the space catalog, what they call it, of all the.
So
all the
Dave,
objects.
were you tracking space junk?
Space junk? Most
Basically.
of it's
Yep.
space junk. Yeah.
A Devo
Yeah,
song.
which is actually a huge problem.
It is. So especially with
There's too much stuff up there.
Well, yeah, and you consider the size of the International Space Station now. So the International Space Station is really big as far as a manned spacecraft, because we spent 10 years building that up, and it's a pretty large structure up there. So part of the job is monitoring all of that debris that could, what we call, come into conjunction with the International Space Station. Well, if there's a conjunction assessment, you actually have to tell the astronauts to, prepare to either go into a safer spot on the ISS or to get into one of the Soyuz capsules to get ready to get out of there and come back to Earth. Because if it's a bad enough conjunction, you could have a 17,500 mile an hour object coming out of another 17,500 mile an hour object. When they hit each other, there's a lot of kinetic energy there that's going to make a mess.
And so it could just be John Glenn dropped a wrench or something, and I don't know. That could cause a lot of damage.
Yeah, and
Maybe not John Glenn.
No, he actually, yeah, it wouldn't have been.
He
John.
would never drop a wrench.
No, John Glenn didn't do any spacewalks. In
Oh,
his two
okay.
flights,
He
but-
threw one out the window as a joke.
Yeah,
Yeah, he rolled down the window. Phil.
yeah, yeah. Just trying to get a little fresh air. Roll down the window here. Oh
You just think
crap!
of all
It's a
the- all-
vacuum.
just-
Damn it!
Just the amount of satellites that have gone up over the decades. I mean, just that alone is huge.
Yeah, and the bigger problem is the small stuff. So there's a lot of things that we can track, but we're building newer systems to track the small paint chips. So every time the shuttle would come back
Oh,
from
my
orbit,
God.
you think about the windscreen on the space shuttle, and they're very thick. But just about every time we had to replace one or two panes on the space shuttle's windscreen because it had like a paint fleck or something hit it, and it just spider webbed that windscreen.
Oh my God, a paint chip.
Yeah.
I mean, I never have thought of that exactly. I don't think the average person thinks about that kind of thing that's going on, that people are keeping track of and trying to avert and
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be it's going to be difficult as we go further. Like John said, there's lots of stuff we put up, and we're putting up more now. We're putting up a lot of small stuff. So these last couple,
in every other country.
these last couple of launches that we've done, we're putting up like 80 small satellites in one launch.
SpaceX.
Yeah, with some of these launches. So just think about all that. And now we're getting into an era where, hey, you can pay to fly into space. Somehow we're going to have to figure out how to clean it up. And different countries are working on some of those solutions. But eventually we're going to have so much stuff up there, it's going to be kind of hazardous to fly around as a person in low Earth orbit.
There's a new. I could do that. I could retire from the university and be a space junk collector, or I could have a big vacuum cleaner ship or something.
There was
No?
a TV show in the 70s that was called Quark. Do you remember?
sounds
do you
familiar,
remember
but
that
I
show?
don't-
It was
I don't-
very.
I
It
don't
was
know if I
only like
watched
I
it.
think I remember
it's like
that
one
Yeah.
season or something, and that was their whole job. Was they just floated around in space collecting garbage.
Oh, for Pete's sake!
Yeah.
And,
was
and of
very
course, the
pathetic.
Devo song.
Well, no, I love the space junk song. Space junk.
It isn't really about space junk, but
Well, usually their songs had a little bit of a double entendre, which is that French? It
Well,
was a double pier.
You didn't pronounce it correctly if it's South Dakotan French.
double entendre.
And Tendry.
Dendry. Double A.
Double.
Double entendre.
Oh, there you go.
Double. Wasn't that like a German group in the 80s?
Dublé.
Dublé. Yeah.
They were all.
Captain.
Everything was on.
Captain of Your Heart, by Dublé, 1986.
They only recorded on.
I think it was in the top 40 in 1986. So.
On Dolby.
Dolby.
No, Dolby Plus. No, is that a thing, John?
No, I don't think it was. It's now a streaming service, however.
Dolby Extreme.
Extreme streaming service.
No, I mean,
Extreming service.
actually, stupid Comcast uses that pretty much as
Do they?
their logo. So yeah,
I thought Dave came up with that.
no,
thing
it's
we
not
could-
a joke, unfortunately.
Ah.
Their
Extreme.
branding is no, they call it Xtreme.
Oh.
Oh. One thing talking about the road trips.
Yeah.
I used to always I would study comedians and that kind of thing, and but Dave you seem to have a different conduit of comedians and radio people. I think you introduced me to some a whole different streaming service of old comedians. But yeah, like Stan Freberg, I had never heard of him before I met you. But what were some other ones that you?
Yeah. So Stan Freberg. So my dad was in media.
Larry.
Yeah, he was on the.
Yeah, my dad was into Stan Freberg too. Actually,
Yeah, he did the KOTA radio and television in Rapid City, South Dakota. So he did that for a long time, and then before we moved to South Dakota, before he got married, he did traveling road shows and things, kind of like the old minstrel shows and stuff way back. Kind of were dying out in the 50s, but my family has a long history of kind of that vaudeville and
Wow.
that kind of entertainer side. So my uncle, Harry King Cole, was on Hee Haw, and
Wow.
he was a character known as Weepin' Willie on the Hee Haw program. So he's a
Not the Weeping Demon, John.
yeah. So look it up sometime. Look up Weepin' Willie on Hee Haw. But he was this kind of old guy that nothing ever went right. That was his character, and he was always kind of crying
Sure.
into the phone. But he had this whole stand-up routine that he did. That was one of the characters he developed as part of his stand-up, and then he's got some albums. I've got the albums that he recorded back in the day.
Wow.
So I don't know if I ever played any of the Weepin' Willie stuff for you back then, but I did Stan Freberg, which I think he was. I still love Freberg because he was back in his day. He made fun of current events type things, kind of like a lot of the late night show guys do now. But
Sure.
for the day he was on radio, but then later on after after that radio era went away, he was big into advertising. So he did a lot of television commercials and things that were always very silly. That were
Yeah.
Stan Freberg. Spike Jones, I think
Oh, sure.
I introduced you to that. The 1940s era, music and comedy.
John's family was into that too, or
Yeah.
John's dad.
yeah, we kind of grew up listening to Spike Jones records.
Yeah. And so did I. I mean, I listened to all this stuff as I was growing up, and then of course, I remember going to my, and these are just corny, Midwestern stand-up, comedy stuff, with a lot of corny jokes. So that literally if you watch Hee Haw and the radio, the old radio guy, it's KORN radio, so it's true to form. So that kind of stuff is what I was raised on. Comedy wise. So I had a lot of old Freberg records that I listened to. I memorized his radio shows from the 50s,
Yeah.
and again, unless you have an appreciation for some of that, contemporary history from the 1950s, you'd probably miss some of the jokes today if you were to listen to some of it. It was very, very,
old referential.
very topical type stuff. It'd be like
Yeah.
watching. What was the NBC show, A Laugh-In, which was very topical for the times. If you look at it now, it's kind of silly and you miss some of the jokes, but it was very good the day. I mean, I remember watching some of that as a kid. the old laugh-in shows, and then later, Flip Wilson show.
Oh, yeah. I watched that.
Tony Orlando and Dawn. Some of those things from the 70s.
There was a lot of
variety
those kind of
variety
shows.
shows.
Variety shows.
Yeah.
Sonny and Cher.
Sonny and Cher. Yeah.
The Osmonds.
Donnie Marie. Yeah.
Donnie Marie had
which
a
was
they had a
really
show.
at some point we talked about the old Muppet Show, the original one.
Yes. Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
and that actually is kind of a take on a lot of those shows because it's also a variety show with all the guest stars and musical numbers and
Yep. Comedy
bit.
numbers.
Just kinda making
musical
fun of that.
numbers.
I mean,
Yep. Yep.
they're great, but they're definitely a reaction to what was on TV at the time too.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's big in this household because my wife is from Anaheim, California. So when she was growing up, like we went out to the Rushmore Mall, right, to hang out or whatever. And they went to Disneyland, to hang out, and so this house, I don't think you can. I'll quote a friend of mine. You can't throw a dead cat without hitting something Disney in this house. So now, why you're throwing dead cats, I don't know.
So you must all watch the Disney Plus service then, I'm guessing.
Yes, that was a mandatory have.
And you know what? I like to rip on Disney, but that service, for what it costs, if you're into Disney stuff, it's a steal. They have a huge back catalog of their stuff, even the old clunkers we grew up with.
Oh yeah,
which is pretty cool.
Yeah, you can watch.
Well, you want to watch them again?
You can watch. Was it Gus the kicking mule or whatever, and all those.
Yeah,
great
that's
70s.
I was
of the
thinking of like the Cat from Outer Space.
Cat from Outer Space, or the Apple Dumpling Gang.
That's what I was just thinking too.
Any Don Knotts movie.
Yeah, they've got all that stuff there. It's
Herbie.
not just
Don
Hamilton.
The Love Bug.
It's all Hamilton now,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
Well, but no, they have a really. That's the thing I'll give them credit for. They really, they give you a ton of stuff. I mean, a very deep catalog. So it's and for what it costs, it seems almost too good.
well, what was that on? It was like on Sunday evenings, I think. Was a Disney TV show.
Oh, the Wonderful World of Disney.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
That was kind of must-watch TV when I was a
Sunday
kid.
night
Yeah, that's
movie
when
and
they did their
everything,
old. In fact, they in the ancient before we were born, they were doing those animated outer space science ones. Where they would talk about how we were going to explore space and everything. And
Wow, I don't remember that.
they're some of them are actually kind of a classic.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'd go every Sunday. We'd go on these little family things in the Black Hills or something, a picnic or something like that. And I was like, oh, I hope we get home in time for the Wonderful World of Disney. And often we did, but
Because you couldn't tape it.
right.
Not
in
back
those
then.
days.
No.
Yeah.
No, you
Yeah.
had the you had the 3 or 4 TV channels. And I remember, you know what the old remote control was? It was
like a clicker or something.
No, it was me. I would
Yeah.
be
Yeah,
standing
there
there.
was a kid.
If you get up to leave and your dad's, oh, hey, why don't you turn the channel for me? And you
Yeah.
Get up and
you'd
take care
be
of
up
that.
there turning the channel until he was happy that you found a program that he liked. Of course,
Or
you're only
adjust the
scrolling
antennas.
through, 3 or 4 channels. It didn't take a whole long time until cable came around. But
And often I'd, every day at noon, I think, when in the summers, your dad was on giving the news. So he had the morning news or the midday, or what was that show?
yeah, so
Your
on
dad.
KOTA they had a,
Party line.
so they had a party line, but that was on radio.
Yeah, that's different. Yeah.
So that was he hosted Party Line on KOTA radio in the 70s, and
That was when it was a real party, back with the Coke and stuff.
Kind of like the same thing with how you get the one person that complains about your podcast. You get the same person that would call in on Party Line all the time, complaining about whatever they did in Rapid City. Well, Mayor LaCroix did whatever.
I mean, talk about it just a dated thing that nobody knows what. Like if you say what is a party line, like, and how many people would remember that it was a shared wired telephone line that multiple
So
households
strange.
had?
Yeah.
That's because that's what that was.
So weird.
Not that I mean, it was an old thing when I was a kid, even, but I
Yeah.
knew what it was.
Well, yeah, we were a little young for the the old telephone numbers. I want to call Cascade 52 or whatever. But we did have the rotary dials. Back in the 70s. Before the
I
touch
used them a
tone.
lot. For some reason, my parents never, to my knowledge, had one. I don't know if they sprung for the touch tones or.
The fancy stuff.
Yeah, I know. We had the fancy.
I remember
we
every
always had
time
cable
somebody-
TV too for some reason. I think that was. I never experienced.
Did you live on the west side of
the
town?
antenna stuff. No, east side. No, we were on the less desirable east side of
One
town.
of those west siders.
No, for some
No,
reason, my
they
dad
spent their money on
always
certain
sprung
things.
for cable, even though it only bought him like 4 extra channels.
Yeah. Yeah, we lived out
Denver TV, yeah.
We lived way
You
out.
kind of lived in Rapid Valley,
We were
didn't you?
in the
sort of?
valley, yeah. So who was totally in the valley out there, So, but right by the
Dave was a valley girl.
out by the racetrack,
Right.
Rapid City
By the Speedway.
Speedway, yeah.
Still
So
there.
Oh,
so the
I
Speedway,
had an uncle that was a racer there.
yeah.
Driver.
We used to go. So every Friday, I think it was every Friday night and Saturday night. I think they had races, but every Friday night, we used to go, and we would kind of stand across the street from where the ticket takers were, and
Yeah.
once they left, a couple races in, they'd leave, and we just walk in and then watch the races for free. I mean, it was just over the hill.
Oh, at some point you probably saw my uncle Joe Trusty.
I probably
he
did.
he had an orange. His thing was always having an orange car. That's probably one of the reasons that color orange is my favorite color. Another thing. So you were talking about these silos interspersed all throughout South Dakota, but when I grew up, I didn't know about those exactly. But we'd go hunting or fishing quite a bit, and I remember driving around, kind of in the middle of nowhere, I guess. But there'd be these. I remember asking my grandpa once, "What's that?" And it's like, "Well, that's a missile silo." And so maybe at some point you were in one of those.
Well, yeah. So they have the where the missile's located, which is the silo, and then where the crews are located is what they call a launch control facility, and those look kind of just like ranch houses out on the prairie.
Okay. Oh, sure. So you weren't in.
I wasn't in
there.
no, I wasn't in the in with the rocket.
Riding
You
it.
gotta light it down here. Pointy end goes up. So. Yeah. No. So I was in the launch facilities, and then you had several that were connected to you electrically that you monitored. And they're up in South Dakota now. We actually have the Minuteman National Historic Site, so you can go out just out by the Badlands and see the.
That's right. I drove by that recently.
Yeah, you can go
to
see
the signs.
You can see the capsule.
Can you go visit one of them?
Yes, you can visit it. And
Oh, wow. I wouldn't do that.
Take a tour of a capsule like I was in. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'd love that. I was always very curious about that.
Yeah, and then at
I wouldn't have-
at Ellsworth, they have at the South Dakota Air and Space Museum, they have one of the what we call the Missile Procedures Trainers (MPT). So that's what you trained in to learn how to operate the equipment, and they have a full up trainer in the museum that you can go see what
Wow.
the inside of the capsule would look like if you can't take the tour. So.
Oh,
One
that's
time-
cool.
Yeah, one time we went there when I was still doing that job, and I was in there and I was pointing everything out to my dad. I was just talking about all the equipment in it, and I'd been talking for a few minutes. The next thing I know, I turned around and there's 20 people just all listening to me discuss all the equipment inside the trainer. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm giving the show today. So
you could add tour guide
yeah,
to
exactly.
your
I'm
resume.
docent.
So, Phil, one of the long-standing topics on our list is about hunting, which you were saving for this particular episode.
Well, we had a I was going to talk about hunting growing up, and I don't think John has a lot of experience with that.
It's a 0. Yeah.
He would go hunting for.
Mr. Pibb.
No, never.
Yeah.
No, my family was not into that. So that's all I knew.
But but we had a time to lean happy hour, happy half hour once a while back, and you had mentioned I didn't know that when we were friends and stuff. I don't think we ever talked about hunting much, but you had mentioned going hunting, and I was just curious about your hunting experiences in the hills. Like, sounds like you went out with your dad and stuff like that.
Actually, we didn't do a lot of hunting with my dad. He wasn't a big hunter, but when I was in high school, so I had learned, I'd taken the NRA 3-position training, so I was actually in a club where we competitively shot rifle.
Okay.
In fact, I competed in the state of South Dakota, I think my junior year, for the state title.
Wow.
It was our team, and we did not win. I wasn't even anywhere close. In fact, it was probably my worst day of shooting ever. It was in Pierre. It was the first time I ever shot in an inside target range. And,
you weren't training for the appropriate venue.
No, I wasn't. And actually, there was a girl that was there, and she blew everybody out of the water, literally, and ended up, I found out later, she went to the Olympics. So I didn't feel so bad that I got just absolutely crushed. Yeah. But
so you'd go hunting with those guys?
So yeah, buddies of mine that we'd go hunting like after school. We'd pack up in the car, and primarily what we did, we went hunting for like coyote pelts, and in South Dakota it's a coyote. It's not a coyote. It's a coyote. So we used to go hunting for coyote pelts because we wanted the money. We're poor high school kids.
There was some kind of bounty on them still?
There was a bounty back then. I don't remember. We didn't get many, so I don't remember how much it was. And then, and then most of the time, like a lot of what we were doing was we knew a lot of ranchers out there, and of course the prairie dog pests.
Yeah.
Are not good for a ranch because that'll break cattle's leg if they step in the holes and things like that. So
sure.
We used to go do some prairie dog eradicating. So that used to be our
my grandpa used to call it. That's what we would do, target shooting on prairie dogs.
Yep. Yeah, so we'd be up like on a bluff or whatever, out towards the Badlands, and you could hear them. You'd have a big scope, sitting there, and you'd hear that prairie dog pop pop pop,
Yeah.
And then you would try to see how far away you could be when you were taking them out. So I got one at a couple hundred yards, from this top of this hill. And they're little, So and the guy with me is like, "Where is it? Where is it?" I said, "Just wait." I said, and you hear pop, 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 pop. Oh, there it was. As he saw the red spray, when it hit this little.
I remember the.
And people are going to think we're cruel because we're talking about shooting cute little prairie dogs, and they are cute, but they're a nuisance in some places.
Yeah. And we didn't eat them either. What a waste!
Yeah, I don't know if you'd want to eat.
But I remember the hawks and stuff just waiting.
Oh yeah, yeah.
on the rocks.
It depended too what kind of rifle you used too, because we usually a lot of times when I went out, I had like a 223. So a 223 is pretty heavy for shooting at a prairie dog, and there wasn't a lot left if it hit the prairie dog. You literally.
So the hawks weren't getting.
They weren't going to get a whole lot to eat because
we didn't have that. I don't know what we had, a 22 or something. I don't know the numbers.
Yeah, we used to say it made a fine red mist, and then you'd have a pile of gorp, is what we called it. Gorp, guts, organs, remains, and puke, and then that was what was left of the prairie dog.
I remember, so my hunting experience was with my brothers and my dad and my grandpa, and driving around in a van, usually.
Yeah.
And
down by the river? Or no?
There was sometimes. Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe a dry creek.
Yeah.
Creek, and say in Wyoming.
Creek.
But yeah, we'd get up really early, and my grandma would make the meatloaf peanut butter sandwiches for us. And sometimes it was cold, so we might have a little bit of the coffee from the thermos, and the lid was a cup. And I remember, really early, sometimes with a mist and stuff like that. And that was way earlier than even I got up, and I was kind of a morning. I've always been kind of a morning person. But that's why I want to do the podcast early, because I go to bed early. But I forgot. It's like Dave it's 4:00 when Dave starts, but that's early. But anyway, thank you for humoring us. But we'd ride around, and I remember one time it was really cold, and I think it was the first time I had to I had to gut the deer, because you wanted to get all that crap out of there.
Yep.
And it was a weird, I was a sensitive kid. And I remember scooping that out, and it was, at the same time, it was also very warm because my hands were so cold.
Yep.
And so it was a weird juxtaposition of gross plus warmth, and it was a steam coming out of it. And it was, this is going to be our grossest episode ever. But when
it was like Empire Strikes Back with the tauntaun, right? Except you didn't have to crawl inside it.
that was nothing. That was nothing.
Hey,
for
what's
me when
the
I saw
internal
it.
temperature of a tauntaun? Lukewarm.
Somebody knows.
It's lukewarm. Oh, that's bad. That's a bad one. Yeah, that's a dad joke.
Well, I liked it.
Seriously.
It's a dad joke.
It's a dad joke.
But
yeah.
I remember another time. Let's see. Well, there were lots of hunting stories, but I think I was about 13, so it was kind of the rite of passage thing. Or whatever age I was. Maybe it was a little older.
Full disclosure. When Phil reminisces about childhood, he is either 10 or 13.
But this was my year to get, because I had my own license, and it was to get my first deer. And hunting was a big deal for my grandpa and stuff like that. And, I didn't want to let him down. Not that he was like a weird hard ass about it or weird about it. Like, oh, you got to go kill something, kid, or I'm going to throw you in a ditch. But,
Sorry.
Well, that explains
Sound
it.
like that?
oh, he
Sam Elliott or something?
Sam Elliott.
he didn't have a mustache. But so I wonder where we were. It was the last day of the season, and there's kind of a pressure about it. And I did. I was walking up this road by myself, and there was this deer kind of off to the side in between some trees, and in my mind I imagined it was my age, because it was probably not. It was probably on the teenager years of deerdom, and I for the longest time I had that thing in my sights, I guess you would say. I don't know if it had a sight. I don't think it did. I just had that little knob at the end. But I don't know. It felt kind of like it felt like kind of a small eternity. Just looking at it, it's like But anyway, so finally I pulled the trigger, and it got it right between the eyes, so it didn't suffer or anything like that. But then I looked at it for a while, and I thought, oh, I got to take this back to the truck or the van or whatever. And there was a little bit of snow, so it was easier to slide it down the hill, I guess you'd say. But that walk with the deer down that hill, and I was really tired because we'd gotten up earlier, and this was kind of like pretty late in the afternoon, probably early evening, I guess, of a whole day of doing this, walking around trying to find a deer. And I remember just kind of laying it down there, and my grandpa kind of looked at me and said, well, yeah, okay. I don't remember what he said exactly. It's something, you got it. And I think he understood that I was kind of done. And so he said, well, we'll just take care of it from here. So, and but like I've said since then, my first deer was my last deer. So there's my deer story.
I actually think I've got more deer with my vehicles than I ever have with the rifle.
No, we could never find them when I was a kid. It seemed like
Yeah,
they were a lot rarer.
They jump out
Now
at you
they're
if
everywhere.
you're driving in the hills or wherever, you know.
Oh, there's a lot more of them now too.
Yeah, the worst. So I've actually smashed up a couple cars hitting deer over the years.
Oh, no.
Driving, between Wyoming and South Dakota. But the funniest one was in Maryland when I was living out there. And I was
A funny one.
Yeah, so I was coming through. So part of one of the I was up at Fort Meade, and I was kind of driving back home, and it's through some kind of country areas or horse farm type areas of Maryland. Real pretty area, but it's also Maryland at rush hour, and I hit some small towns, so you kind of get into some slow traffic. And there was right off to my right side, there was a big field, and there were a couple of skittish deer kind of out in that field, and the traffic was just kind of inching along, so it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't too worried about it. But then she started coming closer to the car, so I slowed down all the way to a stop because she was coming out and she was going to cross in front of me. I'm like, okay. And it's a deer and they're rattled, and they see all these cars and everything, and
Sure.
she gets on, and as soon as her hooves hit that pavement, she slipped, and her
Oh.
back end smashed right in to the grill of my truck. As I'm just sitting there, I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
You weren't even
I
moving.
hit a deer, and it was more the deer hit me. It wasn't that I hit
think
the
you're
deer.
right.
The deer hit me. Yeah. So
Yeah, tell it to your insurance agent.
exactly. Yeah. No. It's you got to go after that deer, man. That hit me.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. That was the last time, fortunately, that I'd hit one. But it was like, come on, man, I'm not even moving, and I get hit.
The ones in Rapid City are very bold. They, my mom's house, sometimes they just go sit in her yard and just hang out
Yeah.
during the day. It's not at night.
They never would have done that when we were kids. I remember seeing deer
No, it
in
was
town
much more
sometimes.
unusual to see them in town at all. Or I remember when I was in maybe high school, I remember coming home late, probably hanging at Lee's playing D&D all night or something. And, it's like 4 a.m. I'm pulling up and I see a deer, jumping over the fence in the backyard and running away or something. And that was unusual.
I remember pulling into Rapid City at the wee hours after a long drive from Brookings to Rapid, and for some reason we left at at nighttime and drove all night. And,
Yeah, because we left after work or something.
so you'd pull in. That was from after Brookings. Sometimes we did that after we moved to Minneapolis too. Those long drives, but you'd pull out of West Boulevard or whatever to drop Lee off, and there's like that mist, that 4 a.m. kind of mist in your headlights and stuff like that, and there'd be deer, and it was kind of, I don't know, it was really cool. But now maybe that happens every day, so the kids are like, whatever. I saw that on YouTube
Yeah. So
or Instagram.
where we live here, we actually we're near a place called Black Forest, and we're on the prairie, but we're just our development is just off the forest. And every once in a while, now that you have social media, you see all the stuff going on in the neighborhood, and everybody's got Ring
Yeah.
and with the cameras on their doors and everything. So I'll be looking at that bobcat sighting. So we get bobcats.
Wow.
Watch your small dogs. Oh, my dog went missing today. Well, I think I know where that dog is. So we're just close enough to the kind of the edge of town that you get some wildlife. When we first moved in, you could hear the coyotes howling and everything. But the development's kind of pushed out a little farther east of us now, so you don't have as much of that. But yeah, we used to get you get the bobcats, you get the coyotes in here, and that's kind of kept it a little interesting, as at least for pet owners. We don't have a pet, but I always like seeing some of these posts. I lost my little dog. I think your little dog made a meal. Yeah, so.
My dad lives out in sort of near Keystone, kind of halfway between Keystone and Hill City. But every now and then he'll post a picture of a mountain lion, which another rare thing, but they're coming in for the deer, I guess, but it's not so uncommon anymore.
No, there was this great at the Denver Zoo. They have mountain lions up there, and there's this great display in front of the mountain lion cage where it shows, hey, mountain lions can be there even if you don't know it. And it was like a Polaroid picture that somebody had taken, and just the pose and everything like that. But once they developed it, they looked, and in the background in the bushes, you could see this cat head kind of staring out at them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That makes me wonder, though, too, because I don't know. When I was a kid in Rapid City, we'd go wandering around all over up there. I never saw anything like that, but maybe they were more afraid of us than we were of them.
I think for the most part they are. Although living out here in Colorado on the Front Range, you get a lot of people that are their houses are up in the foothills and everything. So you always see stuff on the news or on posts on social media where they saw you get the mountain lions. And again, I think you're right. A lot of them are following the deer, which are pervasive in town now. And so they're coming out to get their food.
Well, in cities, they'll they'll hire people to come and cull the herd a little bit because there's just too many of them.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of predators here, but there was a few years ago a mountain lion was spotted somewhere kind of near here. They can have really wide ranges, but they found out they tracked it or something. It had come from the Black Hills. So
Wow.
Speaking of walking to Pier,
Yeah.
it went a little further.
And I'm tired of South Dakota. I'm going to Minnesota. Yeah.
Another expat.
That's right. Mountain.
Yeah, we only have expats on the show.
Well, our
don't know.
next guest is a mountain lion.
So tell us, why did you leave South Dakota? Well, I heard about grain belt beer. So
No, I wanted to get some spotted cow.
Oh,
The beer? No, actually a cow.
I was on my way to Wisconsin.
This Nature Minute was brought to you by Big Dan's Hand Soup, made by hand with hands. Now with more fingers. Now back to the regularly scheduled program.
that's coming from Rapid City, and the Black Hills and everything, and then of course I've spent most of my life living in western South Dakota and in Wyoming and Colorado. We're used to the mountains and everything and the hills, and that was my first experience of going to the football game at South Dakota State. You go up in the stands of the old Coughlin alumni, and you're up there and you're like, man, I think I can see Minneapolis from here. It's so flat. Wasn't used to that flatness.
No, and then that wind would come through.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Do you remember?
It got so cold in Brookings.
Do you remember? Say going to classes in the winter. So we didn't get classes off until wind chill was like -60. Because I if it was like around here, we'd never have school. If we lived in Brookings, but so we'd have classes until it hit -60 on the wind chill factor. But I just remember when it was like -55 or whatever, and classes are on. Oh, great, great. So you would learn to get. So if you had a class all the way across campus from where your dorm was, you would learn how to get across campus by going through as many buildings as possible. To get there. You remember that?
And they didn't have tunnels like my campus.
No, not like Well, in Minneapolis, geez. You want that. You want to be inside
the Gopher Way or the Skyways.
Downtown, the Skyways. Yeah, I love that because
Seriously.
But maybe they have that kind of stuff now at SDSU. It's changed so much. But there are a lot more buildings now too, though.
Yeah, there's more buildings.
So,
obviously
I haven't been there since.
There's a lot of money. Yeah, I was there a couple years ago. We stopped through. We took my daughter to DeSmet, to the Laura Ingalls Wilder place out there. So we stayed in Brookings because that was civilization, compared to DeSmet, South Dakota. So.
Oh, Brookings is totally different as near as I can tell now. It's grown so much.
Still has Nick's Hamburgers though.
Yeah.
And and it's actually that's grown. That's taken over like the whole building that it used to be in. That little Nick's
It's like
Hamburgers.
a complex.
Yeah, well,
It used to be
I
like
would-
a little tiny.
I'm not sure I'd call it
corner
a
thing.
complex, but I'd say it has a second side to it now.
Oh, they added on.
That's
addition.
got an addition. There you go, an addition.
Nick's Extreme.
That's right. Biggie, Mr. Nix. I mean,
But does he have Pibb?
he does.
Oh.
He does have Pibb, and it's
Same.
it's glorious. Small little
No.
sandwiches, and you get them by the bag, and they're greasy.
So they're a little bit like a White Castle scale.
Same size.
Size, I mean,
but
yeah,
not White Castle.
No, I'm not saying they're actually
Quality.
White Castles.
You guys have White Castles out there in Minneapolis,
Yep.
don't you? Yeah. So I think that's the first White Castle I ever ate was in the cities there.
The city of twins.
Yeah.
In the ghetto.
All right. I don't know.
Oh, John,
1969,
that's funny.
Elvis Presley. Yeah.
John, so now you got a whole other thing. Dave is a huge Elvis fan.
Oh,
I am.
what have I opened here?
I have. I actually have. I spent years and years collecting. I've got all the different albums that he released while he was alive. I've got a copy of each of the originals.
Oh my
that I've
God.
collected over the years. Yeah. Digging.
So if
No
you, would,
outfits,
if you
though?
would recommend, if you've seen all his movies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. if you were to watch any of them, which would you recommend to a new person?
To a new
John's a
person.
movie guy, so
Oh yeah. I don't think I've ever actually watched all the way. I mean, I've seen lots of clips, but I've never actually watched one of them all the way through.
So if you want to see, there's kind of like 3 levels of Elvis movies. There's the when he was trying
Cheers.
to be a serious actor, and there's a couple that he had some critically acclaimed stuff in, and then there's the 60s where it was all just this is all Elvis is doing, and he's churning out a couple movies every year because he's on contract, and he's kind of phoning it in, and they're all it's all formulaic. And then there was kind of the last couple movies actually were just documentary type things. So if I were to watch, because I like the cheesy kind of 60s Elvis, when it's a formula and it's all happy and fun, and the guy gets the girl at the end of the movie, and we stop every 5 minutes to sing a song. That's what I like. That's kind of the Elvis movies I think of, and I would, if I were you, I would watch a movie called Clam Bake.
Oh, I've heard of that one. Yeah.
oh,
Okay.
clam bake.
Baby,
I think I've heard that song.
Okay.
baby, little clam bake too.
I will make it a point to get that watched. Yeah.
Clam bake, gonna have a clam bake.
The guy likes a clam
Gonna have a
bake.
clam bake.
And he was in a giant clam outfit.
Yeah, so
No.
the plot of that one, he's a rich kid, like an oil money guy,
Yeah.
and he wants to do something on his own, not with his daddy's money. So he meets a poor guy, and they switch roles for the movie. The poor guy, wants to be rich, and he's living it up as the rich kid, and Elvis wants to be, just Elvis. He wants to be do things without, the money and the fame, and he's like a ski instructor at a hotel, ski instructor / guitar singing, hip swinging guitar singing ski instructor that falls for Shelley Fabre, who is the the female lead in it. So
Was that her real name?
so that was when the series Coach came out. That was Minnesota
Yeah,
State University.
right.
Shelley Fabre
Yeah, yeah.
was the wife. Yeah. So
Oh, for Pete's sake.
yeah.
Wow.
But in her younger days, she did a couple of different Elvis movies.
No kidding.
But then if I was going for like a drama, the one he got most critically acclaimed for was King Creole,
Okay.
1958. Movie kind of a darker movie. So that was his James Dean role, if you will. So he was, I think James Dean was supposed to be cast in that one, and it was right after he got killed in his car accident, and then Elvis took the role.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. I think I've read about this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know how he died. Did he hit a deer? This isn't funny. It's not.
It was a whole swarm of deer.
Yeah,
Do you
that's
have a swarm?
1958. Yep.
Swarm of deer.
Same guy who
King
directed
Creole.
Casablanca.
Yeah, that's right.
Did King Creole?
Of all things. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Must have been
Okay.
a later one.
So that would
He
be
directed a lot of movies.
probably his best, dramatic acting movie would be King Creole. He did a couple others, but to be honest with you, none of them are really that good.
No, I realize that wasn't his strength.
That wasn't his thing,
It was kind of like music videos before
Well,
there were music videos, and
yeah,
some of
and
those. It was like, hey, now we're gonna we're gonna show somebody singing.
So the first movie he was in, it was just going to be a straight western, and they cast him in it, and they're like, no, we're gonna put songs in it now, and they actually changed the title of the movie to "Love Me Tender," off of one of his big songs, instead of just being a whatever they were going to call the movie in the beginning anyway.
Wow.
But he did make one in the late '60s. He did make one straight western. It was called Charo, which to me, when I hear Charo, I think of Coochie Coochie Coochie. Yeah.
Cool.
So,
yeah.
but yeah, it was.
I don't remember this one. He made a western called
He
Charles.
made a western called Charo. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's the one I want to see.
Yeah. So if you want to watch another, just kind of like an old spaghetti western type movie, that would be it.
John and I
as
have
a
been
side
getting into
note,
westerns.
Clambake also has the great Bill Bixby.
Yes, Bill Bixby is Bill Bixby is his romantic rival for Shelley Fabares. Yeah, I like.
Oh,
I've always liked Clambake, and then he had another fun one. Was called Follow That Dream, like 1964 or 62, somewhere in there. Clambake actually was the first Elvis movie I ever saw, and I saw it in one of the theaters in Rapid City in the summer when they had like a summer kids day, because they're all like G-rated movies. These are,
I remember those summer kids days.
so
You could watch a whole bunch of things
yes.
for all day.
So we went and we watched Clambake, and I was like, hey, I was an Elvis fan then, so we watched Clambake, and that's how I kind of got into that movie. Yeah. Follow That Dream's another one. That's kind of a fun one. Kissing Cousins is interesting. It's he's a
That doesn't sound good.
he's in Follow That Dream. He's out of the army for like disability, and he's with his uncle or his pappy or something, and they're driving down in Florida, and they decide to homestead on this piece of land, this little sandbar, because the law at the time allowed, if it wasn't, private land or something, you could just homestead on it. So they ended up homesteading on this private land. It's kind of a silly movie. And he plays a total. He's a nice guy, but he's not real smart in the movie. So it's kind of fun. And then Kissing Cousins, he's an army soldier that the government's trying to move a bunch of people, homesteaders, off this land in like the Appalachia, and they want to build a missile site up there. So he goes up because he's from that area. He's Elvis. He's from the backwoods, to kind of speak their language.
Yeah,
and,
convince them.
And he
this
ends
is a good
up,
deal.
getting kind of taken into the tribe, if you will, and
Sure.
falling in love with the cousins. So, or they fall in love with him, So, and they Yeah. Oh yeah.
He fell in love with two cousins, so it wasn't his cousin. He fell in love with two cousins.
It's that that old definition of cousins. They're related, but they're not. They're not like first cousins.
Yeah, kissing cousins.
Kissing cousins, exactly. Yep.
I can't really relate to that, but that's fine. We grew up in a different kind of South Dakota, but
yeah,
it's getting closer and closer over the years.
I used to tell that. I used to be kind of one of my stupid jokes that I'd tell everybody. Especially in the Air Force, because you meet people from everywhere. And like, well, where are you from? Well, I'm from the South. Oh, really? Where are you from? South Dakota. Oh. Oh.
Do you have running water?
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Yeah,
Did you ever ride a buffalo?
Did you ever? Yeah. Did you have to take a stagecoach to get to? Yeah. Well,
Not when we were there.
Tell you what, this is the other thing that just chaps my backside is where's Mount Rushmore located? Well, it's in North Dakota, isn't it?
Yeah, people here do that all the time.
Yeah,
They confuse them.
It was in the Denver Post had a, it was talking about monuments and everything going on with monuments nowadays.
Sure.
But there was a whole article in that, and it's a respected newspaper, but the editorial from the editorial board of the Denver Post kept talking about this Mount Rushmore located in North Dakota.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's terrible.
it is. It is. It's just awful. I mean,
Somebody could have Googled that.
yeah, it's not that hard to figure out. There's 2 Dakotas. It's the good one.
Well, I always say they should make them into one. Just make them into one state, Dakota.
I think they should have made them. They shouldn't have been a north and a south. It should have been an east and a west.
That's what I
John,
think.
John's talked about that too.
Yeah.
I think they should just be one
I think
state.
that's right, actually. I think
No,
they would
they
line
wouldn't
up
be as
much
diverse. We have a huge debate about this.
Yeah, because
The economies wouldn't be as diverse.
better. So
well, there you go. That's really what it's all about. No, but the east side is all the farmland, and that culture is different. East River, West River. It makes
Oh,
makes
yeah.
a lot of sense in South Dakota. Not as much in North Dakota because where the river's at. But if you split it down the middle, east and west, the west sides of those states is ranch communities. You've got the Black Hills and the Badlands and everything in South Dakota, and even in North Dakota, you've got the Teddy Roosevelt area up there, Medora, which is very similar, in landscape and everything.
It's like Badlands Light.
Yeah, it's a
not
little
the-
Badlands.
It's the not
It's
so.
North
It's
Dakota,
the
it's
not
lesser.
so bad.
It's lesser.
The not so bad
It's
lands.
to me, it's just like kind of before you get to the Badlands, part of the Badlands. If you're driving around South Dakota, it's like, oh, it's
the
kind of
foot
hilly and nice.
Badlands.
It's the footlands of the Badlands, right?
the lame lands.
The not as bad lands, the moderate. Maybe we'll call it the moderate lands. Or
fine.
Yeah, we don't want something like that. But we were up there. It's pretty up there too. But east side of North Dakota, east
It's
side of South
definitely
Dakota is that
agricultural, though. Yeah.
glacial lakes and flat lands and
Yep. They are much more similar.
yeah, farmland, and the folks that settled in those areas are all similar ethnic backgrounds and everything like that culturally. So it just seems to me that you got the cowboys and everything out west, and you don't have that on the east side. We used to say howdy a lot at least in our family. I don't know if you guys did, but that was you walk down the street, howdy. How you doing there? Howdy.
Hey,
All right, but
Parker.
when you were driving down in the middle of nowhere, did you? And so you have your hand on the steering wheel,
Oh yeah.
and another car would come. And did you do one finger up, or did you do 4 fingers? What was your family's thing there?
Usually it was kind of like the two fingers.
2?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd just give them the middle one.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, it depends. Like in DC or New York, yeah, that's you usually got a 1 finger, but and it was followed with a honk, and like I'm parked just like you. I don't know what you're talking about here.
I'm
It's not my
walking
fault.
here.
Yeah.
This goddamn deer ran into me.
I'm not.
Well-
you're not moving. No, either are you. Yeah. So.
I remember there was I think a guy from New Jersey or something was coming to the hills area he was studying that kind of how people waved and tracking it by region or something like that. And I don't remember. Maybe it's online. He had a study showing each region and how it was more typical to do 1 finger or 2 or 4 or a whole hand or yeah, some guy from New Jersey. I don't know if it really that what happened.
Yeah, that reminds me. So I went when I was in college and I was in Air Force ROTC. Between your sophomore and junior year, you have to go to kind of like basic training, and so I went to basic training down in Kansas, and the one of the guys that was in our, basic training was from New Jersey, and we were everybody was kind of talking about where we were from. So one of the weekends that we were down there, we had this we had survival training. So we were going out. It was just for like 2 days, going out to a kind of like a state park, and we had to live off the land / sleep outside, kind of like going camping up in the hills. And I was like, this is going to be just awesome because there ain't going to be nobody yelling at me all day. I won't have a drill instructor in my face. Yeah. I'll get to sleep as long as I want and eat as much as I want. So they gave you all this food. They gave you, these meals ready to eat, these MREs is what they call them, and then a bunch of meat and vegetables and all this stuff. And then they wanted us to catch a rabbit, and I'm like, damn, we're gonna get fat out here because all we're gonna be doing is eating. And this kid from New Jersey was like, I don't know, are we gonna be able to make it? I mean, they didn't really give us much food. I'm like, dude, we're out here. We're out here for 2 days. You don't have to eat anything. You'll be fine.
Yeah, even if you didn't eat.
Exactly.
As long as you have some water.
Yeah. He was really nervous and worried about it. But when I guess if you've never really been out in way out in the sticks like that, I suppose you would be.
I don't know. I guess we kind of took it for granted when we were growing up, but
yeah, I mean, from where we grew up and we were out, we go out and play, out in the prairie, all the time when we were kids. I was away from the house. I did things as a kid that I'd never let my kids do today. It's like, go wander off, and we did that all the time.
I remember when the street light would come on, then it was time to go home, or I'd start to get dark. I was like, or I'd start to get hungry, I guess, and I would come home, but I didn't have a phone or anything.
No, yeah.
You still don't.
That's true. That's true. I kind of do, but it's not a real phone. That's a long story. So anyway.
Well, guys, are we, I'm about ready to wrap it up if you guys are.
I think so. Rapid City.
Rapid City it up.
Rapid City it up. We did, yeah. So we kind of meandered all over the place today.
That's pretty normal.
Yeah.
This the way I work. But yeah, no, this is normal for me. Thank you, Dave, for being on. And this was a big kick, and I enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, it's great hearing all about you.
I don't get to talk to you as much as I would like. We'll have to fix that. Maybe we'll have another Time to Lean happy half hour one of these days, and on Zoom. And that was a weird mix of folks, but we had a couple theater people.
The SDSU theater department kind of took over.
Yeah.
Kind of at the end.
God love them.
I kind of, I talk about that. I say, when I was going to SDSU, it was kind of interesting because I had kind of a diverse grouping of friends there. Because when I was, my roommate was a jock, but he was not, the dumb jock. He was a smart guy. And we also did, we did some of the theater stuff too. So I hung out, I remember playing basketball with the SDSU basketball team and going out and, devouring the buffet at Godfather's Pizza with these guys. And at the same time later, then, doing some of the theater things with you guys. You actually cast me in some of your children's theater things that you were doing, and doing some of that. We did Capers.
Capers, yeah.
Did that, and so
Mike played Little John.
Little John, yes. And so I just remember it was like, man, I hung out with the jocks and the theater people all throughout college, which was just kind of interesting to be in those two worlds. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, thanks again,
Fine.
Dave. It's been a good show. Well,
thank you, John.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks,
and John, you got John got introduced to some different movies he can check out now. So,
well,
I always welcome that.
I would be interested in hearing, kind of your thoughts on these movies, as a different set of eyes on these, not.
Oh, okay.
All right. I'm the big Elvis fan, so obviously I don't know, if you're a huge Elvis guy or not.
No, I'm not a huge fan, but respectful. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm
I
curious.
loved his
though.
outfits. He had the best outfits.
Well,
I guess I'm kind of a 70s Elvis guy.
from the set,
Yeah,
so-
I'll definitely give a couple of them a watch, and
Yeah.
we'll have another talk about them.
Well, we'll have to do it again because there's a lot more to talk about. We only scratched the surface today.
We'll have an all Elvis episode.
And I'm bleeding because
I'm sure we could.
scratched the surface here, so I need to find
Well,
a bandage.
Thankfully, you have survival training, so.
Yes. I'll stitch it.
All right.
Go ahead.
I got to do my own suture.
Yeah.
Put a tourniquet on this
Rambo.
damn thing.
Yeah.
Here's the song!
I was a lonely missile. I don't know what it was I feared. Russians blowing up the Dakotas and Wyoming. Was that ever really a thing? Hanging out in a fake ranch house. This is not a base town house. I see BMs, I see dead people. This was the church, this was the steeple. I was a lonely missile. I don't know what it was I feared. MCCCD, MCCC, BMAT, MFT, EPPT, MSB, SAC, UMT, UOT, AFB, BMPT, SAB. MCCCSOB.